Hi everyone, welcome to the session of Enabling Data the Awesomely Aptly Accelerated Way. I'm sure all of you are doing good and staying sound and safe. A quick word of introduction. My name is Avisekh Biswas, and I am the head of Data Enablement and Governance of Asia Data Office for Manulife. Manulife has a remit of 10 markets in Asia, as you can see, and the remit of Asia Data Office covers the data management and governance for these 10 markets. We run 2 enterprise data lakes for the repository and for providing a platform of storing all the enterprise data, and the data enablement and governance team is responsible for ensuring that the data is transferred, stored, accessed, and retained in the most appropriate way. The remit of our data governance consists of data privacy. It is very important for a couple of markets in Asia, and we also have to be compliant to a certain extent to GDPR. Then there is data ownership. There are so many different data domains, and we have to ensure that we have the data ownership mapped. Metadata management. There are so many hundreds of legacy applications as well as new age applications, databases and systems running, where providing the right context is very important. Data lineage, data architecture, which is also very important for us to ensure that we have the right setup in terms of our customer and distributor profiles. Data security, definitely, because we are ingesting a lot of data in the data lakes that we manage and operate, and data security is important because we are supporting live access to data for hundreds of users, data integration and transfer for bringing in data from the source, from the data producers, and then also piping the data out to different business segments for different regional and global projects. Data quality for running the data quality program, for critical data elements, data operations for supporting the entire platform. Then there is data storage for archival and retention purposes. There is business intelligence for the visualization of the insights that are produced from the data, and how we are supporting with the frameworks as well as with the management of the pipelines as well as the infrastructure for such business intelligence. And finally, knowledge management, which is managing and version controlling all the processes and the frameworks that are developed and are modified from time to time based on how the business evolves. Now, interestingly, when we initiated the concept of the data office, the regional data office a couple of years ago, we went through initial phase where we were growing quite rapidly. We were bringing in more and more data to the data lake, because the enterprise data lake was supposed to be the repository and the place from where all the downstream consumption and developments were expected to happen. So after that initial spurt of growth that we had for a couple of years, we started facing some challenges. We started getting a lot of escalations, and then we found that there was a big disconnect between what we thought we delivered and what the stakeholders thought that they got. We were facing challenges in getting things approved. Like, for example, if we needed a data sharing agreement to be approved, because there was a urgent need for the data consumer to start accessing and working on the data, we started facing delays. Then there were some challenges in terms of funding and resourcing, because ultimately we'd be charging these markets for the services that we provide to them, since we are a cost center, and we started facing some of these funding challenges because the markets were not very clear what kind of value they were getting from the services that we were providing in terms of data governance. And we had a book of work where we had different stakeholders. Everyone was saying that the work is important, and we didn't know what to do. And there were complaints because, there was this overflowing book of work. Well, the complaints were that we weren't fast enough in delivering what people needed. I mean, overall, it was a bit of a chaotic situation because we were facing so many problems. And at that time, we decided that we would take a step back and take a fresh look in how we are running our overall data governance. And that led to us in doing some introspection and coming up with an approach of awesomely, aptly, accelerated. Now, again, this is not a mantra. This is not, some new concept that we have taken out for data governance. We took on some of the existing concepts in terms of smart project management, in terms of being agile, and in terms of the fundamentals of data management, and strung them together into what would be the core concepts based on which we would be running our data governance. So, for example, awesomely is data governance empowered, and it focuses greatly on people. Now, whenever we talk of data management and data governance, we start talking of technology, we start talking of policies, regulations, standards, frameworks, etc. Most often than not, the people aspect of it comes up later. However, we realized that it is the most important aspect in terms of data governance. Yes, policies are important, regulations needs to be adhered to. We need to have the right technology to help us achieve and adhere to those. But the most important aspect is getting the right people, having the right level of engagement, and ensuring that we remain connected with these people. And that is what Awesomely tries to address. Then we also realized that we need to do the data governance in the right way and establish what are the values of doing data governance. All of you may be aware that data governance by itself, it kind of doesn't always remain in the forefront. It stays at the back. And as long as it is working properly, no questions are asked. It's only when there is a breach or when there is some sort of a bad review that comes out of an audit is when data governance comes to the fore, and then the questions are being asked why it didn't work, etc. So it is very important to ensure that the data governance that we are doing, the programs that we are running, is done in the right way, and we are able to go back to the business and communicate what values we are delivering in terms of quantifying those values. In some cases, as when I talk about Aptly, all of you will see that it is easy to relate to, and in some cases, it may not be easy. In that case, we probably have to just get the endorsement from the business that value has been delivered in terms of the overall value that it is enabling through the right consumption of the data. And finally, accelerated is delivery of data governance in the fastest possible time with a proper handover. Most of you would be coming from a setup which is usually to some extent, it's a federated model. It's a kind of a hub and spoke mechanism where you would either be part of, a country or a department data office, which rolls up to a regional or a global data office, or you may be a part of a global or regional data office, and then you have this kind of a hub and spoke model or a federated model where the regional or the global data office is responsible for the frameworks and the policies, and then the country data officers have more focused approach on what's happening in the country. And in these cases, wherever you are, country data office, department data office, and whatnot, it is very important, and you may have experienced, to do a proper handover. Because while data officers are responsible for coming up with the frameworks and the monitoring mechanisms, recommending the right technology, it is, and again, the people aspect comes here, the data stewards, the data governors, and the business, which is basically the data owners, the COOs, the CFOs, etc., whose teams should be well aware of how to run things in BAU instead of the data offices, because it's not a job of a data office to run the BAU processes. So Accelerated covers that part as well in terms of putting a lot of emphasis on proper handover. Moving on, in terms of Awesomely, so as I was alluding to earlier, without Awesomely, without the involvement of people, we felt that it just remained as data governance, something that is a tick in the box exercise. And we were never able to corroborate how effective our efforts were because we didn't have that proper feedback loop with our data consumers. And of course, there was no connection with the people. So we decided that when we are establishing the people part, we will ensure we know who are our people. And this includes, who are our promoters and who are our detractors, so that we address, we keep the promoters happy with the entire user experience, and for the detractors, we try to address what are their pain areas. Also, what is our role in their goals, and how do we constantly remain connected? Because people keep on changing. You may be working with someone in compliance, you share a good rapport, but then that person moves on and a new person comes. So how do we remain connected? So in that first part of Awesomely, who are our people, we ensured, we revisited our data governance forum. Our initial data governance forum was built to ensure that we have quick approvals, because we were building on the data lake. We were getting markets and different system owners to subscribe, so that we can ingest the data from the different markets and start building on the data lake. So our initial data ownership structure and our initial data governance forum was very lean. It had a couple of people whom we needed to get the approvals and also assess what is the risk of getting the data ingested from one market to another market. But then we realized, once we had built that volume, that we needed to get more people in place, more people who have the skin in the game, who have an interest in ensuring that not only the data gets ingested, but it is of the right standard, has the right context, and it is updated in the right way. And that's where we started bringing in, the people like program sponsors. Earlier, they're like more like FYI, there's this data governance forum, we keep you informed. But now we started bringing the program sponsors, because ultimately they are the ones who are signing off on the budget. And these people would usually be at for the markets at a CEO level, and irrespective of whether they're fully involved or not, they are responsible, or I would say accountable, not responsible, accountable for ensuring that whatever money they are spending is well spent. We started bringing in functions with common goals. For example, we already had compliance and IRM. We made it mandatory that IT has a stake here. We started bringing in the distribution businesses, the marketing businesses, and we also ensured that we brought in some of the other groups who are basically data consumers, but we wanted to bring them on the board. For example, like analytics, we wanted to ensure that analytics has a big say in how we are doing our data governance. And while we did all of these things, our focus was firmly on customers. Even though customers were not a part of the data governance forum, we ensured by bringing in teams like marketing, by bringing in teams like operations, by bringing in teams like analytics, that we are able to hear what is the customer's voice. The next thing we wanted to ensure is that we have a stake in how our different stakeholders are achieving their goals. So for example, we started working with analytics to identify analytics goals. What are their KPIs? Because if analytics has a KPI that they have to build a data model, say from the time the project charter is signed within a 90-day period, and we have a responsibility of ensuring that we get the data to them as soon as possible, we can't have a KPI there where we say we have succeeded because we got the data in an X amount of time, but analytics couldn't get the model out. So we have to work hand in hand, and that's why the mantra that we had is that if our data consumers win, we win. And we started identifying those KPIs. What are those KPIs that we can have which are directly linked to the KPIs of our data consumers or our data producers? And then we got those KPIs endorsed by them. For example, if there is a KPI on the availability of metadata, it is not only where we are getting scored, the data producer is getting scored, but we're also getting scored because one of the responsibilities we have is to ensure that we have entire metadata available for all the data that we're ingesting in the data lake. And finally, what we also considered is KPIs would keep on changing. We might agree on the KPIs in terms of a performance management objective at the beginning of the year, but then in the middle of the year, if the KPIs are no longer relevant, we decided that we'd be bold enough, reject that KPI and have a new one in agreement with our stakeholders. So that's how we developed that tight coupling between our stakeholders' KPIs and our KPIs, which ensured that we will not succeed if they don't succeed. And then the other thing we decided was that we would communicate. Earlier we used to communicate as well, but our communication was more like, oh, we launched this project, or we did this. We launched, a wonderful access framework, which has an automation capability, and we used to, pat our back saying we have done a great job. However, we never, or we didn't take the pains to ensure how that success translated for our stakeholders. So we changed the entire communication scenario. We started telling a story in a way our stakeholders would understand. For example, if I take the access management use case, then the narrative now became, in the way this has been developed, if you raise a ticket to get access to a certain data, instead of days, it would happen in hours. Maybe if it was taking 5 days earlier or 4 days earlier, it would happen in 4 hours now, and which would now be carrying more context for our stakeholders, because getting access to certain data is critical to get those analyses started right away. We also started calling out the contributions. Again, we can't do it alone, so whatever support we had from them in terms of, for example, from the data producer community, in terms of the contextual support from the data stewards, and from the data consumer community when they helped us by participating in the UATs and the demos. We also maximized our engagement. Instead of sending in emailers, we started bringing them in and we started doing product demos. So if we develop something as a sort of a phased development, we used to bring them in and say, hey, this is what we're doing. What do you think? We started using a lot of Microsoft Forms, which we started to embed in, our emailers, or if we had built a dashboard showing some metrics, we'd put a Microsoft form there and say, can you rate us from 1 to 5? 1 being not at all satisfied or very dissatisfied, and 5 being very satisfied. And we try to gauge what is the pulse. And if we are getting scores of 1 or 2 from certain pockets, then we would go out and ask for them, what are you doing? What do you think this is not working? And we would try to work on that feedback. We started taking feedback very seriously. And if there was merit in what they were saying, we would take it up for the next iteration of development, or if it is not possible, we will tell them why it's not possible. So we kept the channel of communication open, and we tried to tell a story in the way they would understand. Yep, so this is the quick recap in terms of awesomely have the right people. We, of course, very important, we develop the right RACI and escalation matrix so that everyone knows what is expected of them. And if that doesn't work that way, whom they're going to reach to. We interlinked the KPIs, and we had an open communication. A lot of things which we communicated, we also communicated what we're doing in terms of the KPIs. We used a lot of those forums and polls for instant feedback, and we took that feedback very seriously. Moving on, then, in terms of the next part, which is introspecting our processes to see how we can improve, we realized that we had to find answers to what is the right thing that we have to do, what is the simplest way to do it, and how do we quantify our benefits. And that's where, in the right thing to do, we made it a point that we would establish our standards and frameworks first, or give the priority over technology and processes. So there is always this temptation. We would get an attractive data governance tool. Maybe you can do something by one click. You can get different attractive visualizations of your data discovery, but then it doesn't support your standard access management solution, and then you have to rewrite your entire standard. So that is something we put a stop to. We said, well, these are our standards. These are our frameworks based on those standards, and whatever technology that we want to adopt should be compatible with these standards and frameworks. And if it is not compatible, we will reject it. We also took a hard look at how we are managing exceptions. Of course, there will be exceptions because business keeps on evolving, the demands and the requirements of data keeps on evolving, but then we cannot afford to, manage by exception. So we started looking at those exceptions. We also started calling out the risks. Whatever are the risks, we started calling them out and we started recording them, saying, hey, this is a risk, and trying to assess who is the right owner. And if, the business would come to us and say, I think this is fine, we would explicitly ask business that we would not budge until you accept this risk and get it recorded. Find an owner, accept this risk and get it recorded. And then, of course, we had that escalation matrix. So we went ahead and we, that escalation matrix that we developed, we worked on that escalation matrix, and we made it effective. If we were unable to manage exceptions, or we were unable to address, or people are not taking us seriously when we were calling out all those risks. In terms of what is the simplest path, we focused on choosing simple solutions over pretty looking solutions. When we started revisiting, a lot of things, we first looked what we had developed, and if it was not working, we didn't throw it away and just, start building on something new. We attempted to reuse it. So we had a data quality program, and we realized that, the solution that we're using is no longer compatible. So instead of rejecting it and building a new one, we lifted and shifted that solution from that existing infrastructure to a new infrastructure. We started seeing our solutions, be it access management, data quality, metadata management, from a user's point of view, because for a user, it doesn't matter whatever attractive data model we have done or whatever attractive visualization we have done if they don't get what they need when they need and in the right way that they need. And we started developing things in parts. For example, if we had to build an enterprise data catalog, it's a humongous exercise. We didn't wait for 1.5 years to build the whole catalog. We started building it in parts. Started to bring in, have the whole solution architecture laid out, and then started bringing in databases with the metadata one after the other. The other important part is we focused a lot on the quantified benefits. So what is the value that we're delivering? We started interacting a lot with the PMOs to understand that. In some instances, for example, data quality, it is very easy. It is easier to determine. But then again, if you do data lineage, it is very tricky to say how much dollar benefits it's delivering. So in cases like this, where we could not establish a direct linkage between the dollar value and the overall project, then we would just get the endorsement from the PMO saying, acknowledge our contribution vis-a-vis whatever is the total value that the project is delivering. So for example, if we have built an access management solution for a certain project and that project is expected to deliver a benefit of 2 million, we would get an endorsement from PMO saying how the access management solution was useful and what value the project is delivering, and then you would get that that quantification recorded and reported at the right forums. So yeah, so in terms of recap for Aptly, frameworks should complement technology. Don't manage by exception. Risk management is very important. We involved users very early to get their point of view. We started getting the dollar benefits from the PMO, and we reported those benefits and kind of reflected, what were those projects in which we were participating and delivering those values vis-a-vis our funding to justify why we exist and why we should continue to be funded. The final aspect of our fresh approach was accelerated. We work in an agile environment, so for us, being fast means a lot. So we had a very hard look at our time to market. So we focused on 3 things. We needed to know what are our top 2 priorities, what is the definition of done, and how can we enable self-service. So in terms of our prioritization, we ensured we never have more than 2 priorities, and we know what is our top priority. So managing that top priority became our top priority. But to do that, we got that endorsement from our stakeholders. And wherever we faced issues, because there would be multiple stakeholders, to each group, their own project would be important. And we would say, We would, get into the negotiation mode. If it didn't work, we would get our senior leadership involved to identify what are our 2 priorities, and then secure funding and resources for those priorities. I mean, a priority is good, but if the resources and the funding is not there, then it doesn't help. We can't proceed. Then in terms of what is the definition of done, we insisted on having very clear requirements of what is the definition of done, both for functional and non-functional requirements. If there was a requirement to stand up a data governance solution, for example, a data dictionary dashboard for the markets, we got very clear functional and non-functional requirements in terms of what is needed, what is the frequency, etc. And we specified a warranty period very clearly, saying that if we are building something based on a framework, if we are providing the technological solution, then based on the RACI that we had established in Awesomely, explain what are the responsibilities for the markets, for the data stewards, and what is the handover period post our development. It can't be in perpetuity. And we aim to meet those requirements when they were firmly established. Instead of adding enhancements, our goal remained meeting the agreed requirements. And then once we have done the UAT and we have the agreement from the stakeholders, publish this, or this goes live. We didn't try to add additional features that were not asked for. So we remain firmly focused on meeting those agreed requirements. And finally, in terms of how to enable self-service, we actually invested a lot in automating, in ensuring that we have minimal manual touch points. We invested in terms of, for example, in terms of data classification, we invested a lot in machine learning. In terms of the data flows, we used automated solutions for change data capture. And at the same time, we decentralized a lot of controls. This doesn't mean that we relaxed those controls. We made the data stewards responsible for overviewing a lot of controls. For example, data quality dashboard, if it is expected to run at a certain frequency, then we ensure it is the responsibility of the specific data steward of the data domain to ensure that it is getting refreshed. It is not on us as a regional data office to check each and every data element or each and every domain and see if it's refreshed or not for a market. It is the data steward's responsibility, and if it then doesn't work, that individual is supposed to avail of the escalation matrix that we had established in Awesomely to let us know that it is not working, and then we take a look. We also established a franchise model, which is if you're bringing in a new concept in all the markets, instead of doing it end-to-end from one market and moving on the other market, we started developing basic templates. For example, in data quality, when we wanted to embed the data quality program, instead of taking one market, for example, Hong Kong, a big market, trying to do for the whole of Hong Kong, which would have taken more than a year, maybe 2 years, we identified what are the critical data elements for each of these markets. Amongst them, what are common for all the markets, which is absolutely needed to do business, irrespective of whatever is the product. And we established templates to ensure that these get delivered first at one go simultaneously for all the markets. So for data quality, we were able to launch the program, and right now we have the capability of launching a data quality program as long as we have access to the production data within a week of getting that access. I jokingly call that model the McData model. It's a bit like, a take on the McDonald's way of doing business, where you have, a franchisee concept, but the experience and the quality that you would get in McDonald's in one location would be similar to that of a different location. So, key takeaways being focus only on the 2 priorities, seek management support to negotiate. We ensured we had clear requirements and delivered only to those requirements. We had clear handover plans. We maximized automation, we empowered our users, and we initiated a franchise approach to roll out any concept. With that, I come to the end of the session. Since this is a recorded session, you may not be able to ask me questions direct. However, you can connect with me via LinkedIn and we can have an engaging conversation. It was nice presenting. Thank you all, and look forward to answering your questions if you have any. Thank you, everyone. Bye.